Hey everybody, what's happening? What's cracking? So, here we are with part 3 of Witchcraft and Family Members. Hmm. Ever since I had posted up this video that I saw on YouTube of Spiritual Cowboy Girl with her mother, I have wanted to address my version of what I've been dealing with my father's side of the family and their little bad juju and bullshit. So, yeah, here we go with part 3. So the last of where I left off was when I was talking about how times of being away from my father and his side of the family were where things felt light as a feather. And boy, as I kid you not about that. So tell me why, when I was 13 years old, was when I decided I was like, yeah, I'm really through with these people, especially my aunt. Because from the time of when I was like 11 turning 12 until 12 turning 13. So I was in the sixth grade until seventh grade was when I had to deal with my aunt shit, and I did not have a really good middle school experience because of her. Now, I made friends when I ended up moving into that school district to where my aunt was living in, and she embarrassed the living shit out of me to where I didn't even get a chance to step outside of my fucking place. She wouldn't even let me sit out on the fucking porch. Cause yeah, she was that fucking controlling fucking bitch. And when my mother finally came to let me know, like, hey, I found another home, you no longer have to stay with your aunt, I felt so relieved. You have no idea. And when my grandmother died, which is their mother, and that was a very ugly sight. I have already made a video in regards to that. It was so messy, and that's what made me finally decided that I wanted nothing to do with my father's side of the family. Because as I was growing up, I was getting to see who they really were. Now, mind you, I was still a minor, because yeah, 13 was when I decided to like stop talking to them. So there were times when I did get to see them again at the age of 15, and those times were inevitable. Like when I was with my father or my brother, of course, my brother, he's always in good terms with everybody. He's a Libra. I had no choice but to kind of tag along, and I'm like, fuck, I don't want to see these people. So there was an incident that happened because of my mom always being the breadwinner, and my father would find some way to bullshit my mother to get money out of her, especially to get a yard so he could use that area to fix cars. But the moment my father had asked my mom for money and she said no was when the argument got intense and my father laid hands on my mother. So that was a more than enough sign for my mom to leave my dad. So now, as my mother understood the assignment, so she left my dad, and it was her and I. Yeah, because at the time I was still a minor, since I was the last born out of three. And honey, what I have had to witness was just okay, my face says it all. So yeah, my mother and I, we lived in two locations, and then all of a sudden she's like, yeah, we're just gonna move to Florida. This was like an abrupt decision, and me, I was just devastated because I was still a teenager at that time, and it was already enough that we went through place to place. I've been moving around since I was like 6 years old, and all of a sudden now to tell me that we're making a big move from what we're used to, what we are so familiar with, right? And then finally, we're moving to a different state where it's a complete different type of like culture. Okay, aka a culture shock. That was definitely what I had when I moved over there. So, what the fuck? I really want to say this with my bare chest, but you have no clue how difficult it was for me to have to move into a different state with my mother and just only my mother and I, where I meet family members that I barely know of. It was literally like the first time I've ever met them, right? And also having to deal with my mom's opiate addiction. It wasn't over yet. Um, and at her times when she would used to overdose, it was very difficult for me to, just to have to explain that situation to other family members. It was quite embarrassing too. But also to mention was how I literally did feel like I was on my own. It was like me against my mother and her relatives, where I just started not to feel loved at all because of whatever my mom would tell these people. Now, the one thing I can actually compare to people with opiate addiction, now to anybody who has seen the Netflix series Behind Her Eyes and is very familiar with that character Rob, then you would know. That's kind of what my mother became. Now, the utmost audacity of what I had to hear from my mother, especially before I decided to cut her off, was when she was telling me, "Do you know what it's like having to take care of a child with special needs?" Well, I wanted to reply by saying, "Do you know what it's like taking care of a mother with an opiate addiction?" Yeah, I'll wait. Which at times it makes me think this is also another reason why my mom did actually start her opiate addiction as well. Yeah. And overall, my mother and I did have our highs and lows when we were staying there for almost 6 years in Florida. But what really fucking sucked was that she kept bringing my dad back into the picture. Yeah, because my father would used to come to see us and he'll stay for like a good like 6 to 8 months of a time period. And then he would go back to New York and we'll be there for a certain amount of time and then do the same thing again. So I knew something was really sketchy. And I not living in Florida for a longer amount of time. Okay, we didn't even complete the 6 years. All right, like I said, we moved from December of 2003 until of November 2009. Now, as I'm making this story time, I'm starting to have an epiphany that maybe we might have been going through a spiritual warfare while we were over there too. Wow. Wow, I just saw 9/11 on the clock. And I keep messing up. This is like my sixth time where I was going to say the reasons of me saying that is because for real, my mother and I did go through a lot of shit when we were over there in Florida. But yeah, there's also another story time that I would like to make because what really made me realize that I should have had my spiritual eyes open was when I saw this shadow figure of a person. And this is all due to living right next door to a hospital where literally the emergency room was facing us because we used to have this patio where we could step outside and literally just see the hospital. Yeah, I'll get to that someday, I promise. And I've been meaning to tell you guys that I have not forgot about my part 4 to my story time of how I embarked my spiritual journey. Just things just keep on coming in the way, just these darn freaking distractions, or just kind of being in a days where it's just like, I don't feel like making another TikTok video. I don't I don't understand why the lack of motivation. So, just letting you know that that's coming soon. So I did want to touch up more on what Spiritual Cowboy Girl's mom was talking about in regards to witchcraft and family, and especially those that carry that negative or low vibrational energy, where when it comes to harvesting energy, especially yours, because they see something great within you and they want to harvest that shit for that reason, which really irritates my soul. But I am an actual witness of it because of what I went through back in 2021 when I was staying with my aunt for about 2 months and change. Because seriously, from the time where I got kicked out of my last residence and when I was staying with her, where she was forcing me to get a COVID vaccine. Now, you remember the whole statement about my body and my choice? She didn't give me that fucking option. It was either I got that vaccine or I was going to be homeless. Yeah, that's how much of a fucking controlling bitch she is. Now, I'm going to go ahead and carry on the next story time into part 4 because this video is about to end pretty soon. So, until the next video, I will see you. Bye, guys.